Eric named The Athletic. Giannis, I'm curious, when you look at Kawhi on the other side, he's a guy that's gone through it. He's gone through some losses. He's been here in the playoffs before.
Played well. He did everything he could to help his team win, and it was a tough guy to guard for our team.
Malika Andrews, ESPN. For both of you guys, I'm curious, you guys have talked a lot about how at this point, sometimes it takes experience. I'm wondering if now that you have some of that experience, if you see more validity to that point, or what you think about that now that you've gone through it.
Shout out to Self Talk who covered this, as well as Clive NBA Parody who highlighted this as well. That's an old clip that resurfaced of Giannis walking out of the post-game press conference of the last game in the Eastern Conference Finals in 2019. That series ended with Toronto beating Milwaukee. Giannis disappointed when Milwaukee won the first two games of that series, being up 2-0. And then still, it was a big disappointment because they didn't expect to lose 4 straight games back to back. Lost the entire series, and then after winning the East, Toronto advanced to the finals where they defeated the Golden State Warriors. Yeah, Toronto made history that year. It was their first appearance in the NBA Finals, and they won their first NBA championship in that series. And shout out to Kawhi Leonard and all the folks of LA. It was our LA brother that put on and made history for Canada. He was the Finals MVP. His performance led the team to victory that year. But I will have to add that Giannis, he won the league MVP that same season. And a lot of fans really thought they would take it all the way, win the finals, and he would have been the finals MVP as well. But that didn't happen for him in 2019, although he came back 2 years later in 2021 and won his first NBA championship. So yeah, all the disappointment led to that moment at the press conference, but there's also another reason why he walked out. You notice when Malika Andrews first stood up and announced herself, he was irritated. Why, you may ask? That's because Malika wrote a really bad article about him that ESPN published just minutes after the disappointing loss. He didn't like what Malika wrote, and he didn't like the timing. He was already frustrated from the series itself, and then Stephen A. Smith explained the situation and said the article wasn't Malika's fault. Take a look.
And I personally asked her what happened, and we had a conversation about that as well. Obviously, she's incredibly professional and thorough at what she does. She does a sensational job for us. Her question was not beyond the pale. It was more than fair. It was professional, and she's to be commended for the job that she did. Having said all of that, I don't think we need to overreact to what transpired with the Greek Freak. And here is why. He had just lost a big game. In the aftermath of losing that big game, she had to write a story, which obviously she wrote before the game, that basically was posted after a loss. It was in preparation of Milwaukee losing this game. So inside of a 15 to 20 minute period, after losing the game, he was made aware of an article that she had written where basically she did her homework, spoke to a multitude of people, and was thoroughly informed that, again, a lot of his decision making as it pertains to his willingness to stay in Milwaukee are tied to reaching the NBA Finals. If Milwaukee's progress towards the finals is impeded in any way, this season, next season, etc., at some point in time, he's going to want out. In a period of 20 minutes, in the immediate aftermath of suffering the most devastating loss of his professional career, he got wind of that story, and he was not happy about it. And so we have to look at it from the standpoint of whether it's Joel Embiid crying or it's various other moments that guys have had where if they had to take it back, they obviously would. This was a moment in which the Greek Freak just didn't want to be a part of because he was looking at the person that wrote that story. Obviously, he didn't like it. Certainly the timing of it all, that's not her problem. She didn't do anything wrong. ESPN didn't do anything wrong. They were doing their jobs. But in that particular moment of time, a 24-year-old guy in the biggest game of his career just lost it, and he's reading a story in the post-game locker room about how, excuse me, you know what? I might want up out of here if we don't get to the NBA Finals. And rather than go off or say anything that he might regret, he elected to get up and walk away. I kind of understand that.
Yep, so he was already upset, but when the same reporter that wrote the hit piece on him showed up at the exact time, He's like, hold up, wait a minute. I'm not talking to you after you wrote that about me. And especially not right now while I'm already mad. Because you know she's a woman, and if he said anything or didn't have the right tone, he would have been Me Too'd. Especially in 2019 when you had all these nutty feminists running around talking about believe all women no matter whether or not it's true or if their stories made any sense. So yeah, going off on Malika Andrews could have caused a lot of problems for Giannis. That's why he simply got up and removed himself from the situation instead of falling into a trap. Malika's question wasn't a bad question, but again, her article was a bad article, and he was hit with that right after a very disappointing loss. At the time, Malika was a writer trying to come up and was able to get a prime position at ESPN after they had some personnel changes at the network, post the whole BLM movement and everything that happened in 2020. A lot of folks capitalizing on those times to gain positions for themselves when they could really care less about black people and the black men. That's the reason for them being able to have the jobs they have. And I do agree with one part that Stephen A. said. He said Malika didn't have anything to do with the timing of the piece. It was folks at ESPN responsible for scheduling the time for that article to be published. But Malika Andrews still wrote the piece. She knew what ESPN wanted, and she worked to give them what they wanted. It wasn't just the timing of the piece, but he was upset with what she wrote as well. ESPN obviously using black women as co-conspirators, and they are intentionally picking black women who adopted feminism to help them carry out a bigger plan. You know, because both of them, they have the same common goal, and that's to destroy black men, destroy black athletes. You know, Malika isn't the first one to be called out for this. Stephen A. Smith, he's been criticized for the same practice. For years, these reporters could write stories filled with rumors, being messy, and people can even make up things about these men that stick with them forever. I reported on that about 2 years ago when clearing up the Kordell Stewart situation and telling the truth about what really happened to him in Pittsburgh. If you missed that story, check out the link below. The truth about who started the 90s lie on Kordell Stewart, reignited by Real Housewives of Atlanta. A lot of the time, those reports devalue athletes, and they always target black men, so many from the NFL to the NBA. I recently covered Malika mentioning the false allegations against Adrian Payne while reporting on his passing back in May 22. And I had a few people trying to defend Malika like this guy here. Pimp Laden says it was the reason he got released from the Magic. You know, basically saying that it was okay for her to bring up those false allegations. And you know, this would have made sense if the report was about Adrian Payne being released from the Orlando Magic, but it wasn't. It was ESPN who broke the news in January 2018, and he got released from his contract for it. But this news report from May 22, it was a short report on him passing away in a small tribute. Even if they explained how he passed away, that would have been more relevant than false allegations from 10 years ago. But there's so much that could have been acknowledged. His high school state championship, his Big Ten championship in college. But they decided to bring up false essay allegations? Even after I explained that, he was still trying to cape for Malika and thought the blame for that ESPN report should have been removed from Malika and we should be more upset with the Orlando Magic instead. Pimp Laden came back with another response. He says, yeah, but it's sports news. I believe she said no charges, so me not knowing this guy's career, I'm more upset with the Magic than her. But I guess the reason of why he isn't in the NBA isn't relevant. Maybe the news wasn't relevant since he wasn't in the game anymore. And you know, he really just didn't understand at all how Adrian Payne was painted out to be a criminal in this so-called tribute and announcement of his passing. He chumped it off as being a news report, and because she said no charges were filed as a result, it's all good. False allegations shouldn't have been brought up at all in a report about him being killed. Malika is wrong for that, and whoever was working with her behind the scenes as well, they're wrong too. I guarantee if Malika was a black man or a white man or a non-black woman talking like that on a cable network about black women, I guarantee you that black women would have shut down those switchboards at that business until they got rid of that person. I really believe that after what's being called out with Malika, no one should even be watching ESPN because it's not just Malika. It's a common practice at that organization. There are other sports channels to watch, along with a slew of independent sports commentators, some famous and then some new reporters, as well as former athletes with their own shows, podcasts that you can also support. Just so many of them, different formats that's bringing you better commentary. But hey, let's go ahead and get the conversation started below. Was Giannis out of order for walking out on Malika? Or do you believe that more players should refuse to interview with people like her? And I still need the answer to this. Why isn't Malika hosting WNBA today? Or why isn't she at the WNBA games asking them questions? Special thank you to Tommy H. I appreciate you, Tommy, for all of your support. Don't forget that you can support this channel as well. Links to Cash App and PayPal are below. Ladies, fellas, want a balanced analysis, want the truth from a woman's perspective? Then you're going to want to subscribe to this channel and don't forget to like and share.